are these people?
I got this article that showed up in my inbox yesterday morning from a Substack called Based Opinions. I never really heard of it. They posted this link.
Based on what?
They posted this link underneath Michelle de Cryptodamus's Substack chat, and I started reading it, and the more I read it, I'm just like, oh, this is good. This is very good. Inside Microstrategy's Bitcoin pyramid. Well, Microstrategy is Michael Saylor's publicly traded software company. So what this does is this explains how the Bitcoin Emperor's new clothes made Saylor rich, while investors will end up paying the price. So he's got this broken down by chapters. It's very much BitConnect. We all have that friend who won't stop preaching the gospel of Michael Saylor and his Bitcoin revolution. The one with the laser eyes who keeps insisting that MicroStrategy's strategy is genius while quoting cosmic Bitcoin prophecies over brunch. Well, this article is your antidote, a mathematical breakdown of MicroStrategy's elaborate financial engineering, who's actually profiting, and why the numbers simply don't add up. It ain't about whether Bitcoin has value. It's about whether borrowing $12 billion at increasing interest rates to buy Bitcoin at high rates, while the CEO cashes out $600 million, is a visionary strategy or a sophisticated pyramid scheme. They might dismiss this as FUD without addressing the math. Okay. But at least you tried before they called you a no-coiner at the next family gathering. That's their little slight for people that don't believe in Bitcoin. You're a no-coiner. You'll be poor. Now let's explore the billion-dollar Bitcoin pyramid hiding in plain sight. Somebody used Ghibli Studio to imagine this. Here is Michael, the prophet of HODL, which is his Bitcoin evangelism. Bitcoin is hope. The rest is noise. You do not sell the ocean for a bucket of water. Bitcoin is a swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom. If these sound like the cryptic, if these sound like the cryptic utterances of a spiritual leader rather than a tech CEO, you're catching on to the Michael Saylor experience. Once an unremarkable business,
the yoke of the devil has been destroyed.
Right? Once an unremarkable business software executive, Saylor has transformed himself into crypto's most mesmerizing prophet. Max Kaiser would hate that you said that. A man who speaks of Bitcoin not as an investment, but as a moral imperative, a technological salvation, and possibly a new religion. Scientology.
The light of America's promise will always burn bright.
Well, it reminds me a lot of Scientology in a way, as far as shaping a new religion, because they're going to end up having so much in assets that to pay taxes on their holdings, they're going to fight to be declared a religion, so it's all tax-free.
Religion.
His Twitter feed reads like a fusion of investment advice, cosmic philosophy, and religious prophecy. Bullshit. American, manufactured
American bullshit.
His devoted followers hang on every word.
American bullshit.
Treating each Bitcoin dip as a buying opportunity. Buy the dip. And each criticism is heresy. Through perfectly choreographed media appearances and conference speeches, Saylor has crafted a persona as Bitcoin's corporate messiah, the visionary who saw what others missed.
Our Father who art in heaven, and to the republic for which it stands.
Hallowed be thy name. Until thy kingdom come, thy will be done. His core message is simple.
And crown thy good into temptation.
But deliver us not into eternity from evil, right?
Something like that.
Right. His message is simple and compelling. HODL forever. Never sell. HODL means hold on for dear life. Never sell. Bitcoin is going to millions. Anyone who doesn't see this is simply lacking vision or the ability to continue funding that vision. But beneath the spiritual certainty lies a very earthy financial engineering project One that would make the architects of history's greatest pyramid schemes blush with admiration. Bernie Madoff is very jealous. The MicroStrategy pyramid. Here we go. A story of financial magic. Let me explain why MicroStrategy is running what amounts to a sophisticated pyramid scheme. Imagine you create a club where members pay $100 to join. You use that money to buy a collectible asset, baseball cards, a Mickey Mantle baseball card. Then you convince new people to join your club for $150 because you now own this great asset. You use their money to buy more of the asset. As more people join at higher prices, early members of the club membership become more valuable. They see their membership more valuable. The cycle continues with new members always paying more than earlier ones, creating the illusion that the club itself is generating value when it's actually just recruiting new members at higher prices. This is precisely
Taylor's oldest time.
This is precisely how MicroStrategy operates, just with added financial complexity to mask the structure. So this is about buying convertible debt and the different layers during and at which they did. Okay, so what it means is basically he was buying a bunch at 15,000 to 20,000. All right, those people benefit directly as Bitcoin's price rises. Then during layer 2, after the initial COVID era and people are going back to work, new investors buy $3.5 billion in bonds at almost no interest as Bitcoin climbs up to 60,000. So they're happy. These funds purchase more Bitcoin, driving its price higher and inflating the value of these holdings here because they're buying it here too at higher prices. Crazy. Right. Then you've got the third layer where latecomers fund $7.5 billion in debt at higher interest rates, with Bitcoin now at 100,000 plus. Their capital sustains the scheme by covering prior debt obligations and buying more Bitcoin, which is going to further enrich these two layers, right? So now, again, now that you're 100,000, people that were buying at 15 and 20, they're up 80,000 already. Times $650 million. All right, so you've got massive scale of profitability here to play with. But people are also withdrawing. Not everybody is holding for dear life. The magic ingredient that makes this reverse pyramid work is the premium. MicroStrategy stock trades at a 250% premium to its own Bitcoin holdings net asset value. That makes no fucking sense. The company is worth more than the company is worth 200 and more than double what it currently holds. Why?
It don't make no motherfucking sense.
No, it doesn't. This allows the company to issue new shares or debt at inflated prices, use proceeds to buy more Bitcoin, and create a feedback loop where early investors' gains depend on latecomers accepting higher valuations. So they're all going to have to pay $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 to keep all these other people satisfied because now they're paying debt on the $15,000 Bitcoin. That debt is now being serviced. For this structure to remain solvent, MicroStrategy must continuously raise larger amounts of money from new investors to service existing debt obligations every year. The debt maturity schedule.
Rule 1, right?
Well, what's rule 1? Well,
once you have their money, you never give it back.
Yes, I know. Thank you, Rob. The debt maturity schedule is brutal. $650 million due in 2025, $3.25 billion due in 2 years, and $8.21 billion due by 2030. Okay, so let's math the math. That's almost $1.75 billion every year just in maturing debt, plus $205 million in annual operational losses from their failing software business. Now, remember, MicroStrategy actually positions itself as a software company, not as a Bitcoin buyer. This means that MicroStrategy needs approximately $1.95 billion in fresh capital every year just to stay afloat between now and 2030. You don't think that's ever going to hit the wall? They're never not going to be. They're just perpetually going to be able to raise $2 billion a year. If they can't raise
shorts in now.
Here's what happens: if they can't raise new money, Bitcoin would need to appreciate at mathematically impossible rates to cover these obligations. It would need to grow 10% annually just to service 2025's debt, 25% annually to service the 2027's debt, and 35% plus annually for all obligations to be settled through 2030. For 6 years. 35% a year for 6 years. For perspective, a sustained 35% annual growth would require Bitcoin to reach a $9.3 trillion market cap by 2030, which is about 9% of all global wealth. No asset in history has ever achieved such growth at that scale. That's like expecting your Bitcoin faucet rewards to buy you a Lambo. Theoretically possible, practically delusional. And even if this happens, early debt is financed with new investors, and this means that new debt will exponentially need to reach even harder targets by 2031 and 2032, and so on, illogical, and so forth. Holy shit. This guy is building a Bernie Madoff-style pyramid Ponzi where he's going to have so much debt that there's no way he could possibly pay it off. Whenever challenged about the pyramid-like structure, Saylor often invokes the "it's just like real estate refinancing" defense, but that's like comparing SafeMoon to the US dollar. Fundamentally different. Real estate generates income through rent to service debt. Bitcoin produces no yield for the holding other than growth. Without cash flow, MicroStrategy's debt repayments depend entirely on new investors, people buying new MicroStrategy stock, or Bitcoin's speculative growth, a hallmark of pyramid dynamics. Nice try, Michael, but number go up isn't the same as rental income go in bank account. Now, here's the other problem. Follow the money and you'll find that Michael Saylor is not really hodling. If you follow the money, while preaching hodl forever with religious fervor, his personal financial actions tell a very different story, one of systematic wealth extraction that would make the shadiest exchange operators jealous. Now, a year ago, we covered an article by a guy who self-immolated, allegedly. I don't know if he did or he didn't. But what he talked about was this. The fact that they claimed that all this money was going into the market, but it was immediately being extracted. They were immediately taking that money out of Bitcoin and putting it back into the stock market or into the bond market or into Swiss bank accounts or Cayman Islands bank accounts. It was not staying there. So let's follow the actual money trail with precision. His stock option bonanza. Since initiating the Bitcoin strategy, his compensation package, how convenient, has increased by over 400%. In 2022 alone, he received stock options valued at $94 million, far more than the typical CEO of a company with declining $500 million in annual revenue and losing $200 million a year. His total granted options since 2020 amount to approximately 1.2 million shares, and the exercise price on those options average around $300 to $400 a share, while the stock is traded above 1,000 for much of this year and last year. So what that means, again,
so he's just raking in money,
and he can cash out and
liquid
triple anything that he cashes out. Now, there's only certain periods he's allowed to cash out when he exercises those. But here's the extraction system. In Q1 of last year, he exercised 500,000 options worth $400 million. He immediately sold most of those, or 2/3 of them, for $216 million in cash. He then followed with the sale of another 370,000 shares of MicroStrategy for another $372 million. And guess what he did with all that money? He bought more Bitcoin with his personal money.
Gotcha.
But his
I mean, he could have
10B5
bought like what, 8 golden Toyota Corollas?
But he also liquidates 5,000 shares of MicroStrategy daily, regardless of price. Why would he do that? Total cash.
You got to get an income?
Well, no, it's so that he can buy more Bitcoin.
That's his income?
No, it's so he can buy more Bitcoin. He needs to break off the money to fund the Ponzi. He's breaking it off from
Makes
the
sense.
Ponzi to fund the Ponzi. While selling these shares, he also carefully retained his 19.9 million Class B shares, which is almost 10% ownership. These voting shares, super voting shares, give him 10 votes per share compared to 1 vote for the Class A shares that are on the market, which ensures that he maintains approximately 68% of voting control. He can never be voted out of his position. He cashes out hundreds of millions while maintaining ironclad control of the company. So in a particularly clever maneuver, he claims to use some stock sale proceeds to purchase Bitcoin personally, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where MicroStrategy buys Bitcoin with borrowed money, Bitcoin price rises, Saylor sells MicroStrategy shares at premium prices, then uses proceeds to buy personal Bitcoin, which helps support the price, justifying more corporate purchases by MicroStrategy. The volatility profit machine. So behind the scenes, Wall Street's sophisticated volatility traders don't care if Bitcoin goes up or down because they profit from its movement in either direction through delta hedging. Okay. They buy MicroStrategy convertible bonds, often at 0 interest. Then they simultaneously short sell it to create a neutral position.
MicroStrategy.
As prices swing up and down, they adjust their hedges, capturing profits from volatility. These sons of bitches are profiting off these guys losing money. That's why they don't care. With Bitcoin's 10 to 15% daily price swings, which happened 27 times in 2023 alone, these traders generate 20 to 30% annual returns, even if Bitcoin goes down. Every time.
Riddle me this, Batman. What would happen if an entire group of people decided to short sell that exact company? You know?
Good question.
Like pull a GameStop on them.
GameStop? But then they would just freeze the market from being able to do that. Every time Saylor tweets that Bitcoin is going to infinity, these volatility traders pop champagne bottles, whether it pumps or dumps, doesn't matter to them. It's the Wall Street equivalent of, I'm in it for the tech, while secretly trading the volatility. So should every company abandon products for Bitcoin? I think so, but if MicroStrategy's strategy is so brilliant, why isn't every company doing this? Should Apple stop making iPhones and just convert its cash to Bitcoin? Should Coca-Cola's abandon soda production?
Already doing that.
I don't think so, no. They're still making iPhones. Should Coke abandon soda production and become a Bitcoin holding company? The absurdity becomes clear when you look at MicroStrategy's actual business performance since adopting this strategy. Their software division generated less than $500 million in revenue in 2023, while losing over $205 million. That's a 40-cent loss on every dollar of revenue. But of course, that's now being used as a front, effectively. They don't care if that loses money if they're making a shitload with Bitcoin on the other side, right? But here's the other thing. R&D investment decreased by 14%. Software development staff reduced by nearly 20%. Product update frequency also fell by over 35%. So they're not really updating and making new software. Their market share in business intelligence dropped almost in half. So as one former employee bluntly noted in a Glassdoor review, we're not a software company anymore. We're a Bitcoin holding company with a software hobby that loses money. The software business serves primarily as a regulatory camouflage, allowing MicroStrategy to avoid classification as an investment company, which would subject it to stricter oversight and constraints. What's really happening is that MicroStrategy is using its status as a public company to create what amounts to an unregulated, leveraged Bitcoin ETF. By technically remaining a software company, it sidesteps investment company regulations while offering investors Bitcoin exposure in tax-advantaged accounts like IRAs. Interesting.
Irish Republican armies?
Individual retirement accounts. So here's the mathematical certainty of collapse. The mathematical certainty of MicroStrategy's eventual unraveling stems from several converging factors beyond the massive debt obligations we've already discussed, which would crash it on its own. So like he says, first, remember that MicroStrategy needs about almost $2 billion a year in fresh capital each year to service debt and cover operational losses. Since Bitcoin holdings don't produce yield per se, new investors are the only possible funding source, which is a classic pyramid scheme dependency. They've got to get new funders. Second, as interest rates rise, the company's ability to issue near zero interest debt diminishes. Recent offerings carry interest rates of 2.5% to almost 6.125%, which is a significant increase from the earlier ones where they offered almost no interest on their bonds. Each 1% increase in their blended interest rate adds another $121 million in annual expenses on top of their $12.1 billion debt load. They just keep heaping cost on top. Now, third, the liquidity problem is severe. They're running out of money. With Bitcoin's true daily liquidity estimated at 10 to 15 billion, MicroStrategy's $44 billion holdings can't be liquidated without crashing the market. Because if you all of a sudden put $44 billion worth of Bitcoin out there, what do you think that's going to do to Bitcoin?
Yeah.
A forced sale of just 20% could trigger a market-wide cascade. It'd be like trying to cash out your life savings in an exchange that just tweeted funds or snafu. Snafu. Finally, if investors decide MicroStrategy's premium over Bitcoin net asset value is no longer justified, the stock could immediately drop in half and prevent further capital raising, which is the death knell for any pyramid structure. So this thing's going to collapse, and it's going to collapse hard. This guy's going to end up in jail or dead. Not from me. They will Epstein his ass. They'll arrest him, and then you'll see him dead in prison, potentially. He will disappear onto an island, and you'll never see him again. Or he will end up accidented. That's my prediction.
What am I gonna do?
As this elaborate financial structure inevitably unravels, here's who wins and loses. Michael Saylor's going to win. He's already cashed out over $500 million while maintaining control of the company. The early institutional investors who got in at the bottom are going to win. The convertible bondholders with their volatility extraction strategy, who make 20 to 30% regardless of whether Bitcoin goes up or down, they're going to win. The financial institutions collecting fees on each new debt issuance, they're definitely going to win. The short sellers who recognize the mathematical certainty of failure, they're going to win, but they're going to have to pay big interest while the thing runs down. And then, of course, media platforms like the Bitcoin conference that benefit from Saylor's provocative appearances and statements, they're going to win for now. Who's going to lose? Well, retail investors who bought the Bitcoin visionary narrative late in the game. Late-stage debt investors facing likely default when the music stops. Employees of MicroStrategy whose company was sacrificed for a Bitcoin bet. Of course, the crypto ecosystem that will face contagion when the $46 billion Bitcoin position faces potential forced liquidation. And of course, the true Bitcoin believers whose legitimate arguments for the quote-unquote assets value get tarnished by association with pyramid-like schemes.
Forced liquidation sounds like something you don't want to go through.
Well, basically, when his company can no longer service its debts, they're going to have to sell off their what's remaining of their Bitcoin at high prices or whatever price. And the minute that all that Bitcoin hits the market, it's going to depress the price of Bitcoin, which means they're going to get cents on the dollar.
what Boba Fett would send, Han Solo off to, Jabba the Hutt. Yeah, send them to the forced liquidation tank.
If MicroStrategy's strategy resembles a sophisticated pyramid scheme, why is Saylor celebrated as a visionary rather than investigated as a potential fraudster? Why is he a regular on financial news networks, conference stages, and podcast circuits? The answer lies partly in the coalition of early influential backers who validated his pivot. In the pivotal quarter preceding MicroStrategy's Bitcoin gambit in 2020 during the COVID time, lockdown, institutional heavyweights like BlackRock, Renaissance, and Dimensional Fund Advisors quietly amplified their stakes. Simultaneously, Susquehanna International began scooping up $300 million in convertible notes, and crypto vanguards like Cathie Wood's ARK Invest, Galaxy Digital, Pantera Capital, and Citadel all boarded the ship. Even celebrity investors like Chamath Palthapaya, I don't know who that is, publicly endorsed the play.
Try again.
I don't know. I'm not going to try that again.
Patia.
Yeah, that too. God bless you. These early adopters, many with ties to financial media and institutional credibility, effectively became Saylor's reputational air cover and his evangelists. History provides another clue. During the dot-com bubble, Saylor was already the master of the financial media circuit. Holy shit, I didn't realize this.
Nice.
In March 2000, MicroStrategy announced a massive restatement of its earnings, revealing what the SEC later called material misstatements in its financial reporting. The stock collapsed 62% in a single day, and Saylor's paper wealth dropped by $6 billion. The company ultimately settled accounting fraud charges for $11 million in 2000. $11 million. He was still worth billions at the time. Yet within years, Saylor has rehabilitated his image and was back to being quoted as a tech visionary. Today's Bitcoin strategy represents a second act that's proven even more financially rewarding. There's also the simple fact that financial bubbles and pyramid structures often persist far longer than rational analysis would predict. Keynes famously noted that markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. At the moment of writing, MicroStrategy holds less than 2% of Bitcoin's supply, and Michael Saylor personally holds around $1 billion in Bitcoin. That a single company and CEO controls such a significant portion of an asset supposedly designed for decentralization is a red flag that would make even the most determined Bitcoin maximalist pause their laser-eyed Twitter routine. But for now, the music continues to play and MicroStrategy's financial dance goes on. But mathematics doesn't care about evangelism, media appearances, or visionary speeches. When this house of cards eventually collapses, remember that while ordinary investors were told to hodl through the storm, the captain had already extracted hundreds of millions in profits, all without having to wait for Bitcoin to reach the millions he so confidently predicts. There's a particularly revealing detail in this saga that deserves special attention. Before launching his Bitcoin pyramid scheme, Michael Saylor was not the tech titan many assume. His net worth hovered around $400 million, certainly wealthy, but a mere fraction of his post-Bitcoin pivot fortune of over $7.5 billion. In fact, his pre-Bitcoin wealth was even less than the approximately $600 million he's already cashed out from MicroStrategy stock sales alone. This context is crucial. The Bitcoin strategy has personally enriched him far more than his entire previous career building actual software. The ultimate irony? While broadcasting apocalyptic warnings about the imminent collapse of fiat currency and urging followers to convert all wealth to Bitcoin, Saylor himself has been methodically accumulating the very things he publicly dismisses: luxury real estate and US dollars. Yes, the same USD he dramatically predicts will default and become worthless. If you can square that circle, you're smarter than I. Because Michael Saylor is a fucking scumbag Ponzi schemer. I'm sorry to financially bother everybody and make your brains all mushy this late at night, but I thought it was important to break down just how big a Ponzi this is and how big this is going to crash the entire market. If you thought what happened Friday was bad, wait till Microstrategy crashes. Because BlackRock's going to go with it. BlackRock's going to go with it. All these ETF funds. The entire crypto market's about to crash, and everybody that invested their real money in that crypto market is going with it. When? I don't know, but it's going to happen. Oh. Golden Monarch says $11 million is nothing. Yes, it was a joke of a fine. A joke of a fine. Even in 2000, it was considered large, but he still was worth billions. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you bearing with me through that MicroStrategy one. I know it was a little rough. It was a long article to read, but I think there's a lot of important context in there about what a Ponzi Bitcoin is, about this guy, Michael Saylor, who's been all over the news, all right, and why he's bad, why we should not be listening to him, why we should be telling other people not to listen to him, and why Bitcoin is surefire to crash. Because if you've got this guy by liquidating all of his other stuff to buy more of it, to pump up the price, to liquidate, to buy more of it, to pump up the price, eventually he won't be able to do that anymore. And the whole thing's going to come crashing down. And he's only buying 1% of it. And there's plenty of other people doing this too. We, on the other hand, are not worth billions at INN. So therefore, we can really use your help if you're able to out of means. The ways to do that, of course, Michael Saylor will not get a piece of any of this. Cash App, $Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. Support independent media, kids. We need it more than ever. Love you all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
Can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.